Welcome. In this video, we will be discussing the object-oriented programming concepts in Java. So, what is object-oriented? Let me give you a bit of a context for this topic. There are many types of programming methods, like for example, procedural, functional, scripting, logical, and so on. One such type of programming paradigm is object-oriented programming. So let's look at the definition. Object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm based on the concept of objects, which can contain data and code. So this is taken out of Wikipedia, and this is the simplest way of defining what exactly object-oriented means. Let's move on to the next slide. Characteristics of an object-oriented language. So as you can see, there are 9 characteristics that I was able to put on this slide. Well, there could be more characteristics, but for now let's focus on these 9. So the first 4 are very important. API, abstraction, polymorphism, inheritance, encapsulation. So these 4 are actually known as the 4 pillars of OOP, 4 pillars of object-oriented programming, or 4 concepts of object-oriented programming. The next few are also important, but these are also characteristics of an object-oriented language. So let me elaborate a bit on each of these. So the first one, abstraction. Abstraction specifies what to do but not how to do it. Basically, what happens in abstraction is we are able to define abstract classes and methods so that when we extend or when we implement these classes or methods in the child classes, we can make the code more reusable. So for example, we can have the class animal with the method walk, and we can implement that in the subclasses such as dog, cat, and so on. We can provide the implementation in the subclasses. So this is the purpose of abstraction. We'll be looking at it a little bit more in depth in the next few slides. Then the next one, polymorphism. Polymorphism means the ability to take multiple forms. Like for example, we can assign the object dog to the parent class of animal. The reason is animal can take many forms. Then the third characteristics, inheritance. So inheritance is basically the reusability and extension of existing classes. So basically what it means is that you can extend the animal class into several other classes, to the dog class, cat class, and so on. Then the fourth one, encapsulation. Encapsulation means binding data and operations of data into a single unit. So this will again be discussed in a future slide. Let's move on to the next characteristic, classes. So a class definition is the basic building block of OOP, and a single entity which has data and operations of data together. So we can say a class is something like the animal class. Then let's look at what generic classes are. Generic classes are class definitions for unspecified data. They are container classes and they are flexible and reusable. So generic classes are, again, the best example is the animal class, because this can be extended into much more specific classes. Then objects. So an instance of a class is known as an object. That's also where the 7th point comes, instance. What we say is the objects are an instance of a class. Then the 8th characteristic, method. Method is an object's behavior. Like for example, if you consider the dog as an object, then we can say it has behavior such as bark, walk, run, etc. And finally, message passing. So what we can do is we can pass messages in between objects. In other words, objects can communicate, and this can be done through invoking methods and sending data to them. This feature of sending and receiving information among objects through the function parameters is known as message passing. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Here we can see some key features of the object-oriented programming. So the first one is emphasis on data rather than procedure. The second one is programs are divided into entities known as objects. Third one is data structures are designed such that they characterize objects. Fourth one, functions that operate on data of an object are tied together in data structures. The fifth one, data is hidden and cannot be accessed by external functions. The sixth one, objects communicate with each other through functions. The seventh one, new data and functions can be easily added whenever necessary. And the final one, follows bottom-up design in programming design. So if we look at these points again, we can see the first point is basically comparing the procedural programming to object-oriented programming. Procedural form programming is the second most common type of programming, so that's why it's important. But like what's important to notice that in object-oriented programming, you emphasize on the data rather than the procedure. So the second point is basically about objects. Object-oriented programming revolves around the fact that we can take objects from the real world and mold it into our program. So that's what object-oriented programming is all about. The third point is that data structures are designed such that they characterize objects. So this is basically like, for example, let's take a simple car. So in a car you can fit 4 passengers. Each passenger is known as an object. So data structure, we can take data structures such as arrays, and we can fit 4 or 5 passengers into a particular array. So let's move on. The fourth point, functions that operate on data of an object are tied together in data structures. So that also is again emphasis on the difference between functional programming and object-oriented programming. If you look at the fifth point, basically this is known as the concept of encapsulation. So what we do in encapsulation is we wrap all the objects, wrap all the methods and the variables of an object together so that it is hidden. So this is done by using access modifiers. We can name it public or private and so on. The sixth point is all about message passing, where objects can communicate with each other by passing messages through functions. So the seventh point, new data and functions can easily be added whenever necessary. That's a core feature of object-oriented programming, because object-oriented programming ensures that the program is extensible and reusable. And bottom-up design, programming design, yeah, that is the final feature. Let's move on. So here are a few advantages of OOP. So if you look at the first point, increase reusability. This means that reusing some facilities rather than building it again and again. So how this is done in OOP is by the use of a class. We can use it n number of times as per our need, and we can create as much objects as we need. So that's where increased reusability comes in. So the second point, reduces data redundancy. So this is a condition created at the place of data storage. So for example, databases, where the same piece of data is held in 2 separate places. So this database redundancy can be reduced by using objects. By using classes. So what happens here is that we don't have to create 2 separate classes to represent, let's say, the class of person. Instead, we can create one class and we can mold several objects of person from that class. So the third point is easy code maintenance. So this feature is more of a necessity for any programming language, and it helps the user from doing rework in many ways. So basically it focuses on time saving because it's easy to maintain and modify the existing code and also to incorporate new changes. The fourth one, fourth one, better security. So there is a concept of abstraction, which is one of the core concepts of OOP. So this abstraction mechanism helps us to limit the data exposure. Also, there's another layer of security provided by access modifiers. So if you, for example, if you declare the access modifier as private, only the access is granted to within the class. So moving on, the fifth point, flexibility through polymorphism. So what this means is that a single function can shape shift to adapt to whichever class it is in. You could create one function in the parent class and reuse it in the child classes. So that's what polymorphism is about. And the sixth point, more effective for problem solving. So object-oriented programming is most often the natural and pragmatic approach once you get the hang of it. Object-oriented programming languages allow you to break down your software into bite-sized problems that you can solve one object at a time. And finally, the modularity for easy troubleshooting. So when working with object-oriented programming languages, you know exactly where to look. For example, let's say there's a problem with the car object, like let's say that the car broke down. Then the problem must be in the car class. You don't have to go through all these other classes and find out where exactly the issue is. So here we know that the problems with the car object, which means that the car class should be rechecked. So these are the advantages of object-oriented programming. Let's take a quick look at the differences between OOP and procedural programming. So the procedural programming follows a top-down approach, whereas the object-oriented programming follows a bottom-up approach. So let me quickly tell you what procedural programming is, since most of you probably don't know what it is. Procedural programming can be defined as a programming model which is derived from structural programming, based upon the concept of calling procedures. Procedures, also known as routines, subroutines of functions, simply consist of a series of computational steps to be carried out. During a program's execution, any given procedure might be called at any point, including by other procedures or by itself. Examples of languages that support procedural programming include Fortran, COBOL, Pascal, and C. So now let's get back to what we were discussing. So the second point is that in procedural programming, you do not find any access specifiers, whereas in object-oriented programming, we have access specifiers such as private and public. So the third point is that adding new data and functions for procedural-oriented programming is much difficult than object-oriented programming. Procedural programming does not have any proper way of hiding data, so it is less secure. Whereas in object-oriented programming, we have data hiding, also known as abstraction. So this makes it more secure. In procedural programming, function is more important than data, whereas in object-oriented programming, the data is more important than the function. So we can also say as a final point that procedural programming is not based on the real world, whereas object-oriented programming are based on real-world objects. Okay, so let's move on. The desirable qualities of an object. So what we must know is that an object must instantiate a well-defined class. Using an object, the following features should be adhered. So there are three basic features that are expected from an object. Modularity, information hiding, also known as data hiding, and the reusability of the code. So modularity, what does modularity mean? Modularity means that the operations or methods should be defined separately for each module of the software project. One of the object's features can be used by other objects as a reusable component. So what is information hiding? The data about one object should exclusively belong to that object, which enables the individual modules to focus on specific functionality. So that's about information hiding. And finally, the reusability of code. An object of one class should have the same functionality that of another. Same code could be usable by all objects of one class. There should not be mismatching of the functionality of one object to that of another. So that's all about the reusability of code. Now let's look at the 4 concepts of OOP. So the easiest way to remember the 4 concepts are API, APIE. So there's a small picture here for just for reference. So let's look at the first concept, abstraction. Abstraction is the process of hiding certain details, which is the implementation, and showing only the essential information, which is the capabilities of the program, to the user. Abstraction can be achieved with either abstract classes or interfaces. The abstract keyword is a non-access modifier used for classes and methods. So if you say that this is an abstract class, what it means is that the class cannot be used to create objects. So to access it, what must be done is it must be inherited from another class. Like when we take abstract methods, what it means that it can only be used within an abstract class, and it does not have a method body. The body should be provided by the subclass which the abstract class is inherited from. So that's all about abstraction. Let's move on to polymorphism. Polymorphism means many forms, and it occurs when we have many classes that are related to each other by inheritance. The most common use of polymorphism in OOP occurs when a parent class reference is used to refer to a child class object. Any Java object that can pass more than one ISA test is polymorphic. This last point is very important to note, and any object that can pass more than one ISA test is polymorphic. ISA test, so let me tell, like for example in Java, all Java objects are polymorphic since any object will pass an ISA test for their own type and for the class object. So what I mean to say is, like for example, let's take the animal, dog and cat again. Dog is a animal. The English is a bit off, but don't worry about it. It should be dog is an animal. But for this purpose of this demonstration, let's say dog is a animal. But we also should know that each object that we create is inherited from the object class. The object class is like the supreme class. We don't have to directly extend the class to any class that we create. It will automatically be added by the JVM. So even though we don't see that animal extends object, it's automatically added. So we can also say that dog is an object. Dog is a object. Animal is a object. So as you can see, any object passes this polymorphic test. Let's move on to the next slide. Inheritance. Inheritance can be defined as a process where one class acquires the properties, methods and fields of another. With the use of inheritance, the information is made manageable in hierarchical order. The class which inherits the properties of other is known as a subclass, or the derived class, or the child class, and the class whose properties are inherited is known as superclass, also known as the base class or the parent class. So here what we need is the extends keyword to inherit the properties of a class. So again, if you look at our example of the animal dog and cat, what we have to do is in the dog class, when defining it, we have to say public class dog extends animal. This means that it inherits the properties of animal. Again, for the cat class, we have to say public class cat extends animal. So let's move on. Encapsulation. Encapsulation in Java is a mechanism of wrapping the data variables and the code acting on the data, which is known as methods, together as a single unit. In encapsulation, the variables of a class will be hidden from other classes and can be accessed only through the methods of their current class. Therefore, it is also known as data hiding. To achieve encapsulation, we have to declare the variables of a class as private and provide public setter and getter methods to modify and view the variable values. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the presentation. Hope to see you again with a new session. Thank you very much for listening.